now we're able to automate operator flows, and that could be big. That could be real big.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome to the Automated Lawyer Podcast. I am one of your hosts, John Fritz, and I'm joined with my co-host, Dan Schnurbusch. Dan, what's going on this wonderful Friday?
Not too much, John. We just got the kids off to school for the last day of the week, and I'm missing that 70-degree day we got a few days ago. I'm with the frost all over the car today, and I forgot to pre-start my car, which I'm still convinced that heated steering wheels is probably one of the greatest inventions in the last 50 years. But I
have to agree. I'd have to agree on that a lot. Yeah,
it was a rough start for my little fingers, but we're doing good now. But yourself?
It's the same. I usually don't like the 70-degree weather. That's the middle of winter, or kind of coming out of winter tease, because then it just reminds me of the fact that I want to be done with winter, and I want to start getting outside again, and doing outside activities and stuff like that. And so don't tease me. Just keep me in the mix, and then when it's time to transition, let's get into the warm weather for good. So
I know I got a tease when I was in Scottsdale. I'm like, I could just stay. I could just stay here for a while, and it was like 70, 80 degrees, and even at night it wasn't too bad. But
tell me about Scottsdale.
Sometimes I yearn for the desert. No, it was good. So we did some talking about AI automation. Just kind of I did my best to get people get their heads wrapped around what's going on, what's coming, and what you can do today. And we had some good an interesting presentation from a FileVine researcher. Was talking about some of the cool stuff that they're doing at FileVine that is it's advanced. It's experimental, I guess is what I would describe it as. It's they're trying to do stuff with agents and trying to squeeze together stuff inside their system that is really cool if it all works out, but it seems like a lot of it is in kind of the petri dish at the moment. But it's good. A good chance to connect with a lot of Maximum Lawyer Guild folks. And
yeah. Well, I don't think the lawyer listeners know. Maybe they do or not, but you presented out there as a presenter, right? At the conference.
Yeah. That's right. So I was invited to speak on AI and automation stuff, and at Scottsdale's or Maximum Lawyer Guild's Scottsdale. What is it? Mastermind.
Yeah.
Mastermind. So
very cool.
It was fun. It was interesting to hear where different people are at and what their plans are for growth and integrating this stuff. And
so real quick, a little side comment on FileVine, right? I've been with FileVine for, I don't even know how many years now, 3 years, 4 years. When I first started out with them, right, I'm like, great, you can build all these custom parameters within your case management system, basically, an easy kind of build out yourself, right? Kind of within the confines of, quote unquote, an open API, case management system, right? And so I love their platform and to be able to build, and we built out a really cool system, for our case management system. But I was like, okay, how do we sync QuickBooks? This should be really easy. And it's like, well, we have to go to this third party that does this sync for us. And each person your sync is different depending on which third party you're going to. There's no universal sync. It's like, this does not make any sense at all. Right. So I'm like, and then they want to charge you $2,500 to be able to connect QuickBooks, so, FileVine has kind of rubbed me the wrong way on a lot of things. And it's basically, all these add-ons that are just trying to they're creating great, if you're going to create a great product's great, but just incorporate it into your normal fees and just make it a standard option. Don't have all these add-ons. So I'm interested to see what they're going to do with their AI and all their stuff, but what is it going to cost as an add-on? And is it something I can actually use in my law practice? Right. So those are two big questions that probably one of them will fail.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's a totally fair observation. It is hard to be an AI, it is hard to do AI stuff for anybody, but it's hard in legal tech, especially because they have, um, the use cases for AI in most cases are going to be so bespoke to the needs of a particular practice, because the whole promise of AI is that we'll be able to replace, you know, uh, a certain level of human functionality and human capability. And, but what you actually need people to do is going to vary dramatically from firm to firm. So I imagine that many legal providers will have a hard time developing tools that are universally useful, uh, rather than what I'm really excited about are, the accessibility improvements. Because to me, the biggest limitation, I hear this all the time from attorneys, is they're like, oh, well, I hear AI is so cool, but we haven't really gotten any benefit from it yet. Not any like huge benefit. Maybe I'll put some stuff in the chat window and talk to it a little bit, but like nothing
Yeah.
that's like game changing. And I think the main reason for that is that the models just don't have a lot of context. They don't have a lot of access yet. Like you can't, like ChatGPT, you log in, it can't go like look at your case management system and look at your CRM and like dynamically pull stuff out and answer questions for you and like take action in there yet.
I don't think you
Um,
wanted to at this point, right? I mean, like, there's not. I mean, I think that with ChatGPT I think it has to be. I think you basically need a company to take basically, the GPT overlay, right, of whatever model they want to use, or all the models combined into one, right, and then have a very specific parameters and firewalls and securities within that company, right? You're basically taking the tech from that and then overlaying it on something, and then creating all these parameters, right? And we've talked about the security issues before. I think you've seen the posts on different, you know, different topics about, whether it's lawyer on the beach or not, but about, people are scared, including myself, about giving access. So, I mean,
mhm,
you have to have a company that comes in and says, okay, and they're doing this. I mean, like I said before, Adobe did this, right? In their model. I'm still scrubbing personal information before I'm using the AI assistant in their model, in their add-on. But yeah, I mean, you're totally right. It's very bespoke, but like someone like FileVine, I mean, has to understand that they need to be able to create a product that's universally adaptable, right? Like,
mhm.
don't create a product that does something for personal injury law firms, because I know they started as a personal injury case management system, right? Um, and a lot of personal injury case, people use that, but there's also a lot of non-personal injury people who use FileVine, right? So create AI agents that can basically do functionality within the system that's not specific to a practice area, right? It can
Yeah.
go to a section of your case management, pull documents, and then send them, or it can go to, you know what I mean? Something more universal that's universal to everybody.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's a good segue into some of the developments in the last couple of weeks. We saw the OpenAI launched I'm sure a lot of people have heard about this by now if you're a listener to the podcast, but the OpenAI operator tool where, basically, it's got browser use, it's got desktop computer use. You ask it to do a thing and it will, develop a plan on how to do the thing. And then it will actually open up a virtual browser window and go log into your tools and pull the data that you want out and answer your question. Now, the biggest limitation of it right now, and this is kind of what's the right word? Brute forcey kind of workaround kind of way in my opinion. Like it's cool and useful, but it's somewhat limited. Like apparently the error margins are really high in terms of it will, get distracted and like go off on a side quest that it thought was interesting and forget what the main
Like a normal
directive.
human being.
Yeah, it's like a normal human being. Um, and it'll get better at that for sure. But that's where I think we're going to see a lot of the development is like all these companies are like racing to put stuff in. But at the end of the day, I think the companies that are going to take the cake on like actually building useful agents that can do like universally helpful stuff is actually going to come out of the model companies themselves, in my opinion. Like OpenAI, like Anthropic, they're going to build the stuff that can do those multi-step things that are universally useful because they don't have any vested interest in any particular industry. That's
Yeah.
my gambit or my bet is where it's going to go, but we'll see. Anything is better than nothing.
I mean,
But have you,
I think you'll see Microsoft be a big player or starting to get into their, they have their Copilot. They've launched that. I think that, natively integrating that ability to perform tasks and function within Windows would be
yeah,
massive because that is, or simply Apple, right? Apple
yeah,
Intelligence, like those things. I think that they're going to be big players when it comes to creating those sorts of products. But I mean, again, going back to like OpenAI, like, can you create a product that, I mean, I guess it wouldn't be that hard. I mean, you have two major operating systems, right? When it comes to computers, right? You have an Apple, and then you have the Mac or the PC, or the basically the non-Apple computers, right? That run on Windows.
yeah.
So it wouldn't be that hard to
The
create.
Linux crowd out there, Linux, goddamn. Go
So it
on,
wouldn't be
sorry.
that hard to create it, but I mean, I'm sure that I haven't. I mean, I looked at the OpenAI version of their operator, right? I like glanced at it, and I'm just like, first of all, they want you to be on, what is it, $200 a month plan to do
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
I don't really want to give access to a new kind of very early stage operations to my computer system. I mean,
yeah, yeah.
that just
It's
seems like a little bit intense.
it's
Um,
definitely early beta, right?
yeah. So, I mean, I think we're going in the right direction. I don't think we'll actually see some really useful products for at least, um, we'll say 18 months, I think, when it comes to having to start. I mean, they're going
Yeah,
down the right direction, but they're obviously just releasing stuff to keep people engaged, right? Like, oh, hey, we got
yeah.
this new thing, this new thing, this new thing. Um,
I was, and this is the newest thing. This came out on Monday. Was OpenAI's deep research model. Now we already kind of had this with Gemini, Google Gemini's deep research, but for whatever reason, nobody gives a shit when Google launches anything, even if it's like awesome and like even like arguably better in some cases. Like Google, like it's easy to forget that Google Gemini has 1 million or 2 million token context window. Like it has by far like it can hold the largest amount of information in working memory by like 5x, and
yeah.
yet everybody's just like, eh, that's
I,
neat, but like,
I think that people are kind of in awe by the OpenAI model, and like, oh, this, and like, and basically the hype around it too. I mean, people have been, you know, they're kind of the TV ad for artificial intelligence right now. And yet Google, the amount of money that they make and what they're going to be doing, and like Amazon as well. Like, I mean, everybody thinks of Amazon as delivering packages, but no
yeah,
one knows the other side, or really thinks about the storage services, the cloud storage services, which is, I think, as
yeah,
big as the delivery services or bigger when it comes to revenue. I mean, it's insane. So like they're going to be a big player in it as well, right?
yeah. You know, you're absolutely right. AWS is gigantic, and
Yeah.
people don't realize it. And what was interesting is I think it like somebody should fact check me on this, but I think it was like literally within the last like 2 to 3 years, Amazon as a company was not profitable. And the only source of profit that
Yeah.
they generated was from AWS because of the enormous, I guess, the enormous margin you can get on cloud compute. Whereas when you're selling products like at cost, basically, and shipping them to people's house in a day, I know they were doing massive infrastructure expansion for about 5 or 8 years too. But
Yeah, that was the way
um,
that they were paying for building out the infrastructure for
yeah,
the delivery services, right? Where that's exactly how they were doing it. And it was funny, the story behind it was like somebody within Amazon was like, "Well, what do you guys think about this? Like, maybe we should, this." And they're like, "Oh, let's just," and someone kind of shot it down, and like, at an early stage, and then, like kept pushing it and pushing it. And then all of a sudden, like, this Pandora's box opened. There's this massive profitability, product that they offered, and they just kind of ran with it, obviously. So
man. But and I'm actually a little surprised Amazon hasn't launched their own model yet. I mean, considering they had Alexa, I shouldn't say that too loud, already going, and it's still one of the best, if not the best, and most capable, like non-LLM personal assistants. Like it seems to understand the most things that you say. It can take action pretty well in the system. I'm generally surprised they haven't launched their own LLM yet, but maybe they're seeing it as a distraction, and they're too late to the game. I don't know. You do got to bet big. That's the thing, is if you're going into LLM development, you are in a high stakes, expensive game right now. So I don't know, maybe they don't see it as worthwhile.
Yeah, and I guess that's another issue as well is because, OpenAI, right? I mean, how many users do they have? They have like 100 million users on their platform.
A lot, a lot.
And then so they increase, a $1 increase, is $100 million increase in, it's crazy. So it's,
Oh, 300 million weekly users now on ChatGPT.
yeah, see
Golly.
300 million. So they're making so much money and that's why they're number one, right? Because they created a universal product that 300 million people. That's how many people in the United States? Like 365
Three-
million.
Yeah,
I mean,
something
that's
like
almost
that.
everybody in the United States. That's crazy.
Yeah, yeah,
But again, we always go back to at least I always go back to how is this, like let's bring it back down to earth to, the micro level on my law practice, right? And
yeah,
and so I mean for me, I want to be able to um, you know, I want to be able to replace some of my paralegal tasks, right? That's what I'm always focused on is like how do I replace some of the paralegal tasks that are repetitive. I mean, you can use some of the automation. You can use automation, something comes in, this and that. But there's always that thing where it's like, oh, well, this happens. Then you have to go in and click a button to trigger the next step, right? And so, and some of it does take a little bit of thinking, right? Where it's like, okay, well, this just happened. Well, now I have to think a little bit, and then I press this button, right? And I
right.
think that's where the operators come into, where they can
Yeah,
process you set parameters of like basic deductive functioning within them, like I've done with Eleanor, right? Eleanor's been amazing at being able to teach
yeah,
and then say like, "This is what I want you to do. Like, think about it. This is what I want you to do. This is the output." And she's spot on every single time now. Like,
yeah,
there's no because of the data that you put in there and the functionality and just a little bit of parameters, right? But then the next step is take that action, right? So
yeah.
think and then take action.
Yeah, what I expect we'll see, because I know they're planning to release Operator to the API at some point, so we'll be able to access it through Make and Zapier. So what I'm imagining are kind of workflows like, new client converts, case gets set up in case management system, Make or Zapier sends a predefined prompt to Operator that says, hey, we got a new case in, here's some of the case details. Can you log into the system and look things over, see if any data is missing, and, send a text message to follow up with the client on anything that's missing. I think we're probably within, a few months of
Yeah.
maybe 6 months of that kind of capability. I could be wrong, but as soon as they open it to the API, in my mind, that's now we're able to automate operator flows, and that could be big. That could be real big. We'll see exactly what that'll mean, but I think the marrying of agentic flows where we can actually have the machine like get in and move around and think like because that's basically what they've done with the tech is they've taken the way operator works. For those who aren't familiar, is it takes a screenshot and then it used chain of thought reasoning, which came out with O1, the idea that it can think out loud and process through in a chain of thought, and it can change course halfway through if it gets partway through its thinking and says, oh, well, that doesn't work anymore. So that's what it does. It takes a screenshot, does chain of thought, and then takes the action based on the conclusion of its chain of thought reasoning, and then it repeats the cycle. So I think that's going to be a really fun set of opportunities of combining traditional automation, like queue, operator, function, operator, do the thing, and refining those prompts to get it to be able to execute on an operator flow perfectly every time. I think that's going to be some really fun possibilities there.
Yeah, I think they need to start small though, right? Like just start small where it's like give it limited functionality at the beginning and then expand upon it, right? Or at least give you the ability to limit functionality yourself,
Oh
right?
yeah.
So it's not going in and going, I'm gonna go into here and there and like, and if I think right now the functionality is based on what I've seen is, oh hey, go book my go up and book travel plans, right? And it'll search, Expedia, it'll find flights for you, it'll do all
Right.
this and do all, like that's great, but let's limit it to something that we can actually use, like, specific to the law firm, right? So it's
Yeah.
like, "Hey, when this happens, think about it. Here's your 4 or 5 options," and, like, there's a lot of law practices that only need 4, like literally, I mean, your paralegal has four options for this particular task, right?
Yeah.
4 options for different options for this particular task, right?
Yep.
Do I, this comes in, I review it. If there's nothing missing, then I request medical records because it's an authorization, or it comes in and it's an affidavit of publication. I need to send this to the publisher,
Yeah.
right? I need to
Absolutely.
pick which publisher to choose from based upon venue, these sorts of things. So very, very basic stuff. But I hope that they, instead of trying to do they at least give you the ability to limit the options, right? Into kind of, I
Oh
would just
yeah.
say more adaptability, right? For the needs.
Yeah. That's how I plan to start it once they launch Operator the API, because they're planning on launching it to Teams and Plus users, so the non $200 a month people, uh, pretty soon. So as soon as it's open in the API, that's where I intend to start, is those very discrete tasks, like, maybe the client input a piece of real estate as an asset of the estate. That triggers an automation that tells operator, hey, we've got an asset. Go look up the assessor's value on the county website. And that's it.
Yeah.
Grabs the county website, puts it back in the case management system, done. Like
Or
that's the whole
searches.
flow.
Yeah. Or like the thing that came to mind was like, we have one where we search CaseNet, right? We send a new client up to make sure there's no other probate actions out there, right? Somebody else didn't file, they didn't know about. So searching CaseNet, pulling the results, right?
Yeah.
Going through and finding, here's the last name of the decedent, here's the name of the client, like, giving it information to be able to find the right case, or come back and say there is no results on CaseNet, right? And it being 100% accurate each time, right?
Yeah. That's a good point. I'm gonna make an automation about that. Checking CaseNet for existing actions, because that
But if you
was
think about it, just go down your task flow list of like setting up a file too. Like,
Yeah.
there's the running, we run conflicts waivers manually within the system. Like, there's so many things that you can ask it to do. And like, that's what I hope FileVine does too, is it comes up where it's basically does this stuff for you, right? Have the bot run your own conflicts check, right? You create those sort of automations that you can do within the system, right? As opposed to something that's not going to work for the actual application process.
No, that's a good point, because right now I think the stuff we can do today has to be looked at from those really discrete things. I posted yesterday about the 3 ways to approach AI that I think are useful. Like, you can go through the chat window and like ask questions, upload documents, use it to help you think, or you can run AI stuff through the API through Make and Zapier. And that's where I think a lot of the productivity gains, or like process gains, come from. And then you can use AI tools within your existing tools. So like, different companies have integrated various AI features into their software. But, the ones that I think are the most helpful on a routine basis are those automated things. But right now, the types of stuff that it can do, you have to look at it in like discrete packages. Like, you can't just tell the AI, go do these certain things. But that's coming. That's kind of here now, and it's not very good yet, but it's going to get better fast. Like the deep research stuff, I thought was really interesting. And for those who are not familiar, basically OpenAI deep research is basically it's kind of like Operator, but instead of like going out and doing something, you're asking it a question. And basically what it does is it goes and crawls the internet for like up to like 30 minutes or more, and then comes back and says, and it uses chain of thought reasoning. So it goes through, it's like, all right, I found these posts or these articles that talk about this. I found this, white paper from, Johnson et al. In 2004 that says this. Therefore, I'm going to keep going down this, chain of thought, and I'm going to go explore this topic. And then at the end, it comes back and it will do things like generate charts and graphs and extract like photos and screenshots and stuff out of the stuff it finds. And it will say, hey, here's a report of everything that I found answering your question. And it's really, really impressive. And what's cool about it is it's now, I'm looking at the performance on, there's a new benchmark called Humanity's Last Exam, which I find to be like a deeply like eerie and yet like apt name for this independent benchmark. But it tests AI on a broad range of subjects relating to expert level questions. So like, how can it answer really complicated stuff in like chemistry or mathematics or, healthcare or whatever. And if you look at the performance reports, I don't want to throw them up on screen right at the moment, but like GPT-4o got a 3.3% correct. Not, leaves much to be desired, right?
Yeah.
So it's like barely over 1 in 100 questions is it getting accurate. And if you look at the charts, that's true of basically every other model in existence until you start getting up to OpenAI O3 Mini. It starts getting up to like the 10% correct range, which is like, woo. But then OpenAI Deep Research now is benchmarking at 26.6% accuracy on really complex research required questions. So 26.6% of the time on these high level expert questions, it is coming up with a correct answer. We're talking about the smartest minds in the smartest, most complicated fields in the world. A model is getting a correct answer, over a quarter of the time. That to me is wild. And we're talking about a 10-fold improvement between 4.0 and Deep Research. But keep in mind, Deep Research is just 4.0 with other abilities, or 4 with other abilities. It's not a new trained model, which is the thing that's particularly wild.
Yeah, it's like here, go and research for 30 minutes, and then it comes back to you, and it's like completely out of the ordinary, left field answer. I've done all my research, sir, and here is the wrong answer 3 out of 4 times.
Yeah,
So,
you do got to be careful though. That's a good point. You do got to be careful.
The problem is too in that much research though, is that when it's doing correct or deductive reasoning or just whatever, advanced reasoning it's using, logic reasoning, and it's saying like, thinking like a human, right? You take one path in the first 5 minutes and you go down the wrong path, and then your entire conclusion can be compromised, right? So
yeah, I guess it also probably depends on what you're trying to, because like science and mathematics and stuff, those are areas where you have a very clearly correct or incorrect answer.
Yeah.
So I think it's whether those things, and there's a different benchmark they talk about in their research paper. The Gaia benchmark talks about more real world questions where the answers are less concrete, as in the hard sciences, and it's proving much more capable. At their high tuned deep research model, it's hitting anywhere from 60 to 80%, depending on the difficulty of the question being asked, in accuracy of results, which is a lot more impressive, but also probably a lot more relevant for people like you and me. But what'll be interesting is when they start to apply these tools to legal research databases. Like when
that's where I was going.
Yeah. So go on. Give me your thought on that.
Yeah, no, I was just saying that's the first thing that came to my mind is, we've done LexisNexis, or at least, Thomson Reuters, all the different, the initial kind of go-to research engines, right, for legal practices. And the problem is, it was all based upon keyword analysis, right? You type in a keyword, that keyword would search the case law, and then you'd have to search through 3 or 4 pages of, lists of cases, and then click on them and then read them, right? It's gotten way better, over the last 10 years from kind of that model. But I think that if you had a limited set, a limited set of, your database, your legal, let's say you have every case ever on the topic of, Fourth Amendment or whatever it is you're doing, right? If it's criminal, right, or if it's civil, anything like that. If you had every single case possible that listed, and you had, your case brief, or the different pieces of that puzzle for that case, I think it would do extremely well in going through and reading them, digesting them, thinking about, is this the right fact pattern? Especially having like the input being, here's a fact pattern, like this is my case. Find something very similar to this case. I think it would do extremely well in doing that. It probably already is doing that.
Yeah. And I think the limitations, and it's probably gotten a lot better since I looked at these AI research tools when they first started coming like a year or 2 ago, with like Case Text and LexisAI and stuff. The issue that I saw at the beginning was that they were returning, they go out into latent space when you enter a query, and they would return whatever the most probable, token response is. And that would be based on the cases, and it would cite to the cases that it found this stuff in, but it may or may not catch the like watershed case that changed the rule, because that's actually a pretty low probability response to your query,
Yeah.
right? Because only in one out of, like, let's say 150 cases does the reasoning divert and go down a different path and change the whole law in this area. So as a probability matter, that answer is actually a very low probability answer, but it is the correct answer, which is something that the models were not very good at first. And I think they might be getting better at that when you add in chain of thought reasoning.
Yeah.
Because now it have now the ability to think through and say, all right, well, this case is different because it changed the rule here and it's dated, the most recent, therefore this needs to be given extra weighting. Are we going to start seeing that in the next 6 or 8 months as we integrate reasoning models into legal research tools? I expect probably yes.
Yeah. And I have to run in 5 minutes for a call, but kind of wrapping this up, or at least finishing about this, with the 4.0 model, Eleanor's based on the 4.0 model, right? And I've given her very strict parameters. Like, when I enter this information, I want your output to be this, right? But it's this specific type of information. Like, if I enter information about the heirs, the assets, and this, I want you to produce a response that it gives me the specific what the specific recommendation is for the probate case, which route we're going down, whether it's a small estate or a full estate, right? And why. And then I want you to give me any specific venue specific parameters or nuances to that venue, right? When it comes to, we need to get consents from, for a small estate affidavit in St. Charles, right? If, from the other heirs, right? And then there's a couple other things, what our pricing is on that, right? And you could do the exact same thing. And this is the 4.0 model, right? And then you have all these other advanced versions, right? But you can do the same thing when it comes to legal research. Find these cases. Tell me the reasons why, come to a conclusion on why this case is relevant, and then stack them into the hierarchy of argumentative on what's the most important, what are the top 5 cases, right? So you're not getting an output of 3 pages of cases, you're getting 5 cases or 4 cases, and then your watershed case should be number 1, right, on that thing, and then the rest of them should be there as well.
Yeah, and the use case that I found super helpful in these, like, argumentative briefs is if you get something in from the opposing side, upload it to O1 or copy paste it in, and don't do the research. Say, hey, read this, analyze the logic, find me the weakest points of attack or the arguments that I need to rebut the strongest, come up with the best argument, and then tell me what I should look for when researching to support this conclusion. And then you can jump into your research platform and start saying, all right, I need to find cases that stand for this proposition. And you might come to the conclusion that there just aren't any. And that's okay. But at least now you have a keen eye on, I think these are the bad arguments. These are the weakest. Here's how we can challenge them. But now I need to go find the case law to support that. That I think is a powerful use case already that we can do today.
So let's do some tips of the week real quick. I'm going to, kind of further our discussion right here, my tip of the week. I think if you're doing any sort of civil litigation work, right, where you have a judge involved, and, you and I were just sitting at the same table, was it Monday or Tuesday? I think it was Monday, in St. Louis County probate court, right? So if you're going to court and you're in front of a judge, now, most of the work we do is uncontested, or at least almost all the work I do is uncontested, right? Personally, in my firm. So we're not having this big argumentative structure where we're asking a judge to rule, right? We're not going on that route. But if you have any civil litigation practice where you are in front of a judge, there is an opposing counsel, an opposing party who you're dealing with in order to come to a favorable outcome for your client, right? Whether it's personal injury work, criminal work, anything, right? You should be creating a judge. So instead of doing Eleanor, I mean, we've talked about this before about creating these mock judges. You should have a mock judge that as one of your custom GPTs that you're creating right now, and you should be feeding it case law, specific nuances from your own judge, the judge you're in front of every single week. Every time you get a specific nuance, this judge likes this. This judge does not like this. This judge hates this. This judge is more favorable to ruling. Here is a summary judgment opinion from them. Any sort of written materials from that judge, you should be uploading into your custom GPT, and you should have a GPT called Mr. Judge, whatever his name is, GPT, right? And it's all you should be doing when it comes to that. Every time that you write a brief that you're arguing in front of them, you're going to submit it to the GPT judge and you're going to ask them, is this something you'd rule on in favor or against, right? Create those custom parameters where when you ask questions, it's going to analyze and give you a ruling based upon the prior rulings and the information that you've uploaded to it, only specific to that judge, right? And start doing that. Even if you have 2 or 3 judges within your sandbox that you play with, right? In your practice area, create 3 different GPTs that are specific to them. See how much you can push the boundary of making them, the most accurate versions of themselves when it comes to getting feedback, and then only do that when you're trying cases and whatnot.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. It's also an easy way to wikiify your judge's policies. Like if your team is like, is the judge going to accept this kind of motion or this kind of, what is the procedural requirement here? If you've got this thing sitting there, great place to go to just be like, hey, I can't remember. Does commissioner whatever, do they allow you to send in whatever with notarized signature or whatever? And you get quick answers to that kind of stuff. Great.
Yeah, absolutely.
My tip would be something I worked on this week that I thought was kind of fun. Is I was envious of John's Domino's pizza tracker system with case status. So I cracked open Canva and made like a Domino's pizza tracker visual of the phases of our case and just downloaded it as a PNG file and dropped it into our template letters that go out and our template emails that go out. And now we have a version of it. It's not quite as flashy, but at least now they have a visual indicator. So see what you can do. Play around in Canva. Have fun with diagrams and infographics, because sometimes clients are they just don't understand. They just can't comprehend written material that well, or they don't read very well. But it's easier to understand it in an image or a picture or a graphical format. So that's my tip of the week. So that's it for this week, guys. If you enjoyed the podcast, join it or leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Join us offline if you want to take the conversation offline. Join us in the Legal Tech Collective Facebook group where we talk about this kind of stuff all the time. And I think that's it for this week, John.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time as always, and everybody have a great weekend.
Yep. Until next time, take care.